As I woke up this morning and went and got coffee at my favorite local coffee shop, I started to think about the events that occurred last night and the fact that civil unrest in this country and around the world is always right on the edge of a knife. It's always just about ready to happen, and all it takes is one tragedy like what happened over in Minneapolis to cause this spark of unrest, which can lead to looting, riots, everything else related to the chaos of civil unrest. And as people who are of a prepared mindset and people who are worried about SHTF prepping, we have to be considerate of the fact that this could happen anywhere. Anytime something as tragic as the events that just recently occurred happen, this can occur. We can have civil unrest, we can have looting, we can have riots. And as I sit here in my workshop and start looking at some of my personal security gear to think about, what I need or what I should do to adapt to our current situation, including adding a new holster onto the belt, these are things that started to come to mind. And I'm not going to speculate or comment on the events that led to the unrest currently going on in Minneapolis. I think we can all agree that it was a tragedy that most likely could have been avoided, and that a lot of us don't agree with the way that things happened over there. But I will say that this is a lesson learned for those of us in the SHTF community, the preparedness community, that these things can occur quickly and can happen at the blink of an eye. And we're always on the edge of a knife of civil unrest. And if that's something you're worried about, and that's something that you're concerned about, stick around for the rest of the video and we'll talk about how to react to these scenarios when they occur. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're going to talk about civil unrest and the fact that it's always sitting there right on the edge of a knife, and that it can happen at any moment, at any time, at any place. It doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, or what industry you're in, or anything along those lines. What matters is that when people are under extreme duress, like they have been over the last few months, people are losing their jobs, they're losing their livelihoods, people are under lockdown, they're not allowed to congregate or be social, everyone's living under extreme versions of restrictions that we've never really had to live under before. Stress is high, anxiety is high, and people are ready to react in a negative way because they're tired of it, they're sick of it. Everyone is sick of being oppressed in one way or another. And especially certain communities here in our country feel that oppression on a regular basis. And what we're seeing now is a reaction to one more event that kind of helps push that reactionary tale further, okay? We are now experiencing exactly what you can expect from any other SHTF scenario. Civil unrest, looting, riots, and chaos in the streets due to one last straw that broke the camel's back. And that is exactly what you can expect anytime we're in a time of trouble or turmoil like we are right now. I think that this event has clearly demonstrated that there is an emotional need in this country for people to let their voices be heard. We have all been stifled for a long time, and whether or not you're on one side of the aisle or the other, you deserve to have your opinion and your voice out there. And right now, with all the restrictions and everything else in place, people are feeling like they're not being heard, they're not being listened to. And all it takes is one tragic event that could have been avoided to cause this unrest to blow out of control. It happens that quickly, and especially when everyone has been as stressed out and as on the edge as they have been over the last few months. It wasn't going to take much to push things over the edge here, but in this situation, it was the combination of everything that we have experienced over the last few years, mixed with the fact that we've been under these quarantine restrictions, culminating into one perfect storm of unrest occurring. And if you live in the Minnesota or Minneapolis area, I'm sure that you're not having a good time experiencing what you're experiencing. However, this is what can be expected from any other SHTF scenario, regardless of whether or not it is resulting in a quarantine or tragic events or anything along those lines. Here we are, okay? And if you're worried about staying prepared or keeping on top of things that are going on that can affect us as SHTF preppers, hit that subscribe button below, because these conversations are things that we have to have, even if they're uncomfortable. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not here to comment or speculate on what occurred over in Minnesota. My thoughts on it are probably similar to yours. And I think we all agree that regardless of any previous situation that occurred in that moment, that there was a tragedy that occurred there that could have been avoided. And we are now experiencing the full brunt of the people's opinion coming together and saying, we're done here, okay? That opinion, that feeling of being done, of being over it, is something that we can expect to see anytime an event occurs like the one we just witnessed, especially when you combine it with the prior restrictions and guidelines put into place on the people that nobody wanted to abide by but felt like they had to. And now you're basically putting someone in a corner and expecting them to continue to react in a civil way. And eventually that doesn't occur. Eventually that goes away and people say enough is enough. And so anytime we're looking at some kind of an event that can change society, that can make us react in a way that we might not usually, it takes one straw to break the camel's back. And that's what happened in Minnesota. That was the last straw for those people. And it doesn't matter if you agree with their methods or not, it's happening, okay? So how do you prepare for such an event? How do you keep yourself ready for when that inevitability occurs? Because anytime we're in an emergency situation, it is inevitable that some form of civil unrest is going to be produced. It's just the way that humans react to stress, okay? So for me, the first things that you want to look at is that these riots, these looting events, they don't occur in rural areas generally. So if you have an ability to relocate to a more rural area, you're usually better off and away from the fray. And if that situation keeps to expanding and spreading and eventually leads to full-scale without rule of law situation, you have more time than those in the urban environments do to prepare for it and to get ready for it, okay? It's already in the urban environment. If you're in Minneapolis, you're already experiencing the unrest on your street, on your block. Here where I am, I have a lot of time before something like that would reach me. But not everybody has that situation. So if you can't get out of the urban environment, what's the next step you have to take to make sure that you can take care of yourself during an unrest situation? Well, one of the first things you need to think about is the fact that police are not going to be accessible. Emergency services are busy. They are no longer prioritizing the 911 call about the guy who's worried about the guy who might be breaking into his back door. They have a lot more on their plate, and you're not going to have those police show up. You're not going to have those paramedics show up when somebody stops breathing or choking on a piece of meat, right? You're not going to have the firefighters respond when your house catches fire because they're putting out fires all over the city at this point. These are considerations you have to make because when unrest occurs, if it's not on a large scale yet, but you're in the locale that it exists in, you're not going to be able to rely on emergency services. So make sure you have basic first aid training. Make sure you understand how to treat wounds or how to treat just basic things like choking. The reason I brought that up is that the Heimlich maneuver is not hard to learn, but it can be life-saving, and you don't need to call 911 if you can get that lodged piece of whatever out of somebody's throat. I've had to do it 3 times in my life. Not that I wanted to ever, but it did work, and it is something important to learn. So first aid training helps you at least get further than if you weren't going to have any training at all and those paramedics aren't able to arrive. The same goes with fire planning, okay? So fire is just like any other emergency. You have to have an escape plan ready to go for your family. How do you leave your home? What do you grab on your way out? What time limit do you give yourself? Do you have an exit strategy? And do you have ways to prevent fire in your home currently? Are your smoke detectors up to date? Do you have fire extinguishers? Do you have ways of making sure that if the fire department doesn't show up, you have something you can at least do to try to mitigate damage or at least keep everyone in your family safe? That's also very important. And of course, when it comes to the third route of emergency response, we're usually talking about police. You cannot count on the police in general to be there for you to protect you in a moment's notice. So when there's unrest and when there are things going on much bigger than what might be happening in your household, how can you expect the police to magically appear and show up there to save the day? You can't, okay? Especially because a lot of people out there have a, let's say, less than positive relationship with the police at this point. Some people might not be willing to call them if they need the help because they're worried about what that might bring along with it. So in that situation, make sure you can protect yourself. Start putting your security as a priority, okay? I make sure I take security very seriously, and in times of civil unrest, that's extremely important. The only person who's going to defend you, your household, and your family from harm is you. That is all that's going to happen during these times. The police are too busy to come protect your home or protect your family, and you have to understand that during civil unrest, like what we're seeing over in Minneapolis right now, opportunist actions occur, and those people that are there for the wrong reasons, for malicious reasons, will be committing crimes in one way or another under the veil of everything else that's going on. And you have to understand that they also are aware of the fact that police, fire, and paramedics are unavailable. They're not available right now. So those people are going to use that time as a window of opportunity. And you have to understand that you're going to be the person to deny them that opportunity if that time comes. So, like I said, I was in my workshop. I got a new holster so it can handle a light on my pistol because I recently installed one, and I'm set up and ready to go to carry that pistol correctly with the light mounted on it now, okay? Upgrades are always important, but make sure you have some kind of security when it comes to a firearm, and make sure you have some kind of security when it comes to protecting yourself, aka maybe a plate carrier or some kind of armor of some sort, because you never know what you might get into. And if you're in a civil unrest scenario, and looting, rioting, chaos is unfolding in the streets, and you're in that area, leaving might not be an option. Being on the streets in those situations is probably more dangerous than just staying put where you are. Unless something major is going on, like your building's on fire or something like that, you need to stay where you are. And if you're going to be where you are, and you're going to have to fortify your location, make sure you can protect yourself, your family, and have the necessary gear to be able to spring up at a moment's notice in case things come down your block, okay? Because this armor, this belt, the firearms that accompany it are what's going to keep me and my family protected in case something like this occurs in our area. But I just wanted you guys to be aware that this is an inevitable scenario in almost any SHTF event. We talk about civil unrest all the time. We talk about without rule of law. And in Minneapolis right now, in many ways, they're experiencing without rule of law because the people in the suburban communities there and the people who live in the city don't have access to emergency response the way that they used to. And that is very similar to what we expect from a without rule of law scenario. No one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. So I just wanted to go over that because a lot of people are experiencing what we all can expect in the future if there's ever other SHTF events. And it takes one straw to break the camel's back when it comes to these scenarios. And as tragic as the situation was in Minneapolis and how out of control it is that these things keep happening, we have to understand as preppers that we have to take these situations, we have to see what's happening, and we have to learn from it and prepare for it the best we can, regardless of your opinion or belief on what should or shouldn't happen after the fact of a tragic event. Use this time to prepare wisely and understand what it is you might be coming up against in the future anytime people are put in a corner the way they have been recently. So, without anything else to say about it, that's going to be it for Magic Prep.